You talk about psychographics a fair bit. I happen to know a lot about psycho X's, but I know very little about psychographics. So what the hell is that?
Well, there was a girl in college.
No, I'm just kidding. Psychographics. Yeah.
Graphics. Okay. Sorry.
You talk about it privately. We talk about it publicly. This is the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast. Welcome again to the Real Estate Insiders Unfiltered podcast, where Keith and I fanboy, both of us.
For sure.
We had a very special human being on who's just, I don't know, his energy level, just the way he looks at the world. He's just infectious in the way that he thinks about marketing and branding. So tell everybody who our guest was.
Yes, we had Nick Mallory, the VP of Marketing for S.I.M.P.L.E. Brands and keynote speaker. We had the pleasure of him keynoting one of our events. He is, as James mentioned, a phenomenal human being. I promise you're going to enjoy this conversation.
Yep.
He talks about his S.I.M.P.L.E, S-I.M.P.L.E framework for marketing, and it's great. It's a great sanity check when you're crafting and creating new things. How he would approach real estate from a marketing standpoint. We talked about psychographics, the power of choosing to go up and down whether you want to go strategic or tactical, when you're in a place where you need to affect change, and so much more. He is brilliant, thoughtful, great human being. You're going to love this conversation. Put it in yours, kids.
Nick, welcome to the podcast. Full disclosure, Keith and I are fans.
We
got to have Nick as one of our keynote speakers.
Look, I'll just say it right now.
Fire. I just threw an F-bomb, by the way.
In the first 2 minutes. Now we're going to get kicked off of YouTube. But
whatever.
If any of you are looking for a keynote, sign this guy. He is amazing. I'm sure he has a landing page for his speaking stuff. We'll put it in the show notes. One of our highest rated speakers from our last conference. And more importantly, just an awesome human being. So
awesome.
Wow.
You're in for a treat, kids. Brace yourself.
I'm done. I'm just going to take that snippet and use that. I'm good. Thanks, guys. This is
you're
great.
welcome.
This is great.
Perfect.
Put a speaker on my coat. Just have that play everywhere I walk. It's perfect.
10% on the royalties.
No, whatever you want. Name your price. It doesn't matter. Let's go.
Well, check your text. My Cash App's in there.
Good. I'll Venmo you. It's perfect.
All right, Nick. So for anybody that doesn't know yet, you've had a really interesting journey. So college for a finance degree, and then you became a rebel ninja of brand and marketing. I love that, by the way, because it's very factual. So talk to us about that journey. We'll start there, and then we'll do some rapid fires real fast.
Well, I make the joke. I went to the Harvard of the West Coast, the University of Oregon. I grew up in Eugene, God's country.
Stanford would like to talk to you.
I'm just waiting to run into somebody at a gig who's either from Harvard or from Stanford. And, but anyway, I went to the U of O. My dad was in banking my whole life. So I thought, hey, I'll go into finance, which my dad was from Indiana. So it was finance to him.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Graduated from college, and I moved down to Arizona. So how do you get a kid from the Northwest to go to Arizona? You have them visit in February where it's 85 degrees and perfectly clear, and moved down and got into the mortgage industry back in the early aughts when the real estate industry was insane. I mean, it was not the go-go 80s, but it was like the go-go 2000s, I guess.
It was go-going.
I bought a house, I sold it 6 minutes later and made $200,000. That was basically the real estate market that I was in. The only problem with mortgages and the only problem with that business and finance, I just wasn't very good at it. And I really liked the finance part of it, but I wasn't a very good salesperson. I just, I didn't like that particular kind of hustle. Let's put it that way. No disrespect to my mortgage brothers and sisters who are out there slaying the dragon. But I moved back up to Portland, coincidentally, right after the entire real estate market and pretty much the global economy imploded, which was awesome.
I remember.
Stuck around. Yeah, it was an interesting time. And I decided I wanted to make a pivot and get into marketing. I always loved marketing. I grew up, obviously, a Nike kid, being from Eugene and going to the U of O. Always had a huge passion for it. It's kind of what I started getting known, and I'm using huge finger quotes here, known for in the mortgage business was like marketing and branding and storytelling and building a brand persona. So I had a client at the time who was a vice president at a restoration company. So like you come home, your basement's full of 6 feet of water. You hire a restoration company to come in and clean it up. He goes, "Hey, we need some marketing help. Would you ever think about taking a job with us in marketing?" And I was like, "Yes, sold. Let's do it." And I didn't even care. I was like, "I will be there on Monday." And that was really my foot in the door. And then about 3 years later, I got hired on at Rogue Ales, which if you're familiar, makes Dead Guy Ale. They're a really well-known craft brewery in the Northwest. And the rest was history. I've been in beer and adult beverage or alcohol beverage ever since. That was about 16 years ago. Was at Rogue for about 5 years. And then I went to work for Widmer Brothers, which is a really well-known Pacific Northwest brewery. Then Kona Brewing Company, which was awesome because I had to go to Hawaii for work.
Dude, how did you cope?
I know. Sorry. Hey, guys, it's a work trip. I got to go back to the Big Island.
I got to go
sorry.
for a month. There are real problems over there.
Yeah. And I got to go to, I have to go to all these bars. It's part of the job, right? I don't want to. And then moved up to Seattle, got engaged, got married, moved up to Seattle.
That's a big shift from Hawaii to Seattle.
Well,
and I don't mean that to be disrespectful, but Seattle's cold and wet.
Well, so here's the caveat. The company, Craft Brew Alliance, that owned Kona was in Portland, Oregon. So it wasn't too much of a leap, but it is definitely the best flight is to Hawaii. The worst flight is home from Hawaii. It's kind of like Vegas, right? It's like going to Vegas.
That is accurate.
That's a good one.
And then I went to work for Elysian Brewing up here in Seattle for about 5.5 years. They were part of the Anheuser-Busch network, which was a huge window into kind of how big beer plays, which was fascinating. Left Elysian, went to work at Boneyard Beer, which is a small craft, awesome brewery in Bend, Oregon. I was still based out of Seattle, but going to Bend every month. And then Ackley Brands reached out and said, "Hey, we're building this portfolio of wine and beer brands. We're on our way to have 15 under management. We need somebody to help us build these things into brands and connect with consumers. Would you be willing to make the leap?" And I did. That was about 9 months ago. And it's been incredible ever since. That's kind of how I went from finance to marketing and just sort of stuck with it. And here I am. So, yeah.
I love it.
So I have a question because people's backgrounds I find intriguing. So you get that phone call about coming to work. I forget the name of the company, the first one to offer you the marketing gig, right? You get that phone call. You got a degree in finance. You've done some interesting things with marketing.
Right.
How did you did imposter syndrome kick in for you? Like, I can think of people who are given opportunities who turn them down or set themselves up to fail because they feel like they aren't qualified or it's outside of their core competency or their wheelhouse. Did you have any of that? And if so, how'd you push through that in that moment?
Yeah. I mean, are you referencing the imposter syndrome that I felt this morning when I was on my way to a meeting with the CEO of the company and the board of directors? Yeah. I mean,
maybe.
Yeah. I think everybody feels that way. And, I certainly did. I think I've always kind of had a chip on my shoulder that, I didn't get my degree in this stuff. I learned it. This is going to sound so Hallmark movie of the week, but I learned it. Yeah, I learned it because I had a passion for it. And I would just read everything and devour everything and study everything I could on marketing and branding and storytelling. How does a company like Apple connect with their consumers so well? Mm-hmm. How does Nike do what they do? And how can I learn? I just, every book I could get my hands on, I read about it. But I would get super intimidated by folks that had a really traditional marketing background. I've worked at a couple companies and around a couple people that had resumes that were beyond impressive and companies they've worked for that were beyond impressive. But what you realize when you get close to everybody is nobody knows anything.
Right.
I don't care where you went to work. Nobody knows anything. Nobody knows if this stuff is going to work. When I was at Rogue, one of the guys that sat on the Rogue board of directors is Peter Moore. Peter Moore is famous for being the first designer at Nike. He designed the Jumpman logo, the first Air Jordans. Wow. And even he would be like, yeah, we had no idea what we were doing. And
Yeah, but your point's valid. Like that is
valid.
almost all. You look at everybody in real estate, 99% of them didn't know what the hell they were doing either. They just jumped in and started doing shit until something stuck on the wall. And they're like, oh yeah. And then they dove deep on that once they figured it out. But isn't that like, in a lot of ways, most success stories?
Well,
like,
and this is the thing about marketing is that it tricks you into thinking that there's some kind of genius necessary in order to do it. Because all you see, think about this, all you see from marketing are the wins.
Right.
You don't see the 900 ideas that they had that are on the cutting room floor that are horrible. You just see, you know, the Bo Knows campaign. Right. You don't know the 50 other campaigns that they tried that never worked. So there's this implied, like, you know, you have to be touched by the gods in order to do it. And I think it's a hard thing to fight because I fight it all the time. I fight it now in my job now all the time. And, you know, you just kind of have to keep reminding yourself to keep pushing forward, keep going, you know?
Boy, isn't that the truth, man? It is all about just ignoring your own brain of telling you it won't work, ignoring what everybody else is telling you, just keep pushing, you know?
And I think the most important thing, at least for me, is, you know, it's funny. I go out and I give these keynotes on marketing and branding, and I talk about all the processes we've used in developing awesome brands that stand out. And on stage, I probably look like, you know, I've never made a mistake in my life.
Yeah. Yes.
The thing, but the thing I want to, I was actually thinking about this the other day. The thing I want to start including in these keynotes is bear in mind that most of this stuff isn't going to work. You're going to try email marketing and it's not going to work. And it's not that email marketing doesn't work. It's that sometimes you just got to keep trying to find how email marketing works for you,
right? Or
how you can make it work for your consumer or for your demographic or, you know, whatever. And man, in marketing, it's like baseball. You know, if you're hitting it 3 out of 10, you're in the Hall of Fame. And you just have to remember, you know, everybody, my wife is also in marketing, and we met in the beer business. And she has this great example talking about social media. She says, you know, people will say, well, go develop a viral campaign for me. Go make something viral. And she's like, what that's like is that's like your neighbor won the lottery. So somebody asks you how to make $1 million and you're like, well, go buy a lottery ticket. My neighbor, it worked for my neighbor. They're a millionaire now. And it's like, it's never happened. So,
you know what this reminds? Okay. Do I have permission to nerd out for just a sec?
Please go.
All right. So this reminds me of survivor bias. So in World War II, bombers were flying to go bomb because that's what bombers do. And the ones that would make it back had bullet holes in the wings and bullet holes in the tail. And they're like, oh, this is where we keep getting shot. So this is where we should put extra armor. Wrong. Right. That was actually, you could get shot there all you want and the plane would still fly. You needed the planes that didn't make it back were getting shot in the other places where you needed more armor and they were getting shot down. So there's this thing called survivor bias where we only look at the successful outcomes, but there's all this other stuff that had to get you to there that we lose sight of. So that was just triggering for me.
I mean, my favorite stories about that and just about how nobody knows anything. And I don't mean to speak ill of my Lord and Savior, Uncle Phil Knight, but I will. I have to say that contractually. I got my business degree at Oregon. If I don't, they'll come take it away. It's on the back of your diploma. It says that, big asterisk on it.
In Phil we trust.
In Phil we trust, right? But in Shoe Dog, he talks a lot about two things at Nike. Number one, naming the company, which he had all these crazy names for the company, like Fifth Dimension was one of them, and Falcon was another one of them. And I think employee number 3, Jeff Johnson, Nike came up, hit him in a dream, you know, wing goddess of victory. And he told Phil Knight, and Phil Knight was like, I don't know, you know, and they're filling out paperwork and he's just like, to hell with it. We'll put Nike down there. And the other one famously was the swoosh. When he saw the swoosh from Carolyn Davidson, who was the graphic designer at Portland State that did it for, I think, about $35. He famously said, I don't love it, but it'll probably grow on me. And again, nobody knows anything. And you look at the swoosh and you're like, oh, that's the most perfect thing ever invented in the history of logo design. And it's like, yeah, but they didn't know, they just took it and ran with it. And sometimes I think we really forget that of like, you don't have to be some genius to do this. When I got at Rogue, Jack Joyce, the founder of Rogue Ales, this old ex-Nike vet, really brilliant guy, kind of like the Steve Jobs of craft beer in a weird way. He would always say, look, all I care about is a good gut, a sense of humor, and a way to look at the world. You don't have to be some Mensa candidate in order to do this. You have to have a good gut more than anything and know when things are connecting with people and when they're not. And we can all develop that skill.
But also some of this just has to do with time. If you think about, I remember in 2005 when Zillow came out, everyone was like, what the hell is a Zillow? Like, it was just, people were like, stupid, like dumb name, etc. Well, okay, it's the number one household name when you think of real estate in the world now. Like, no one even questions it. It's like, oh yeah, I should go to Zillow and search. Like, like,
Yahoo used to mean you were an idiot.
Well, do you guys remember you only bought books on Amazon? I mean, I'm old enough to remember, why would I want to buy books online? I can't hold them, I mean, it's that thing of like, just because something, and look, you can say something trite like, Thomas Edison tried 700 times to create the light bulb. But it really is like, if something doesn't work, that doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means that try didn't work.
Right.
So
that didn't hit.
It just didn't hit. Bus bench ads didn't work. So does that mean bus benches suck, or does that mean your message is off? I mean, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't spend money in advertising. I mean, come on.
All right, let's do a couple rapid fires real fast here.
Somehow we're 15 minutes in.
It's all good. We got good content already. So,
all right, I think I know your answer to this, but we ask everyone favorite book or podcast this year ever. If you were going to tell someone to read something, what book would you recommend and why?
Well, I'll give you I'm trying to look smart answer, and I'll give you a real answer.
Yeah, good.
The Truth, my favorite podcast in the world. And if my wife, who's on the other side of the door to my office, heard this, she'd start laughing. It's a podcast called The Rewatchables, and it's done by the Ringer Network and Bill Simmons, who was a longtime sports and pop culture writer that I've been reading and listening to for 20 plus years.
Bill Simmons is phenomenal.
Amazing. And they do this podcast where they talk about movies that you could just rewatch over and over and over again. And the way they talk about it is kind of how you would talk about sports and sports teams and talking with your buddies. And I look forward to it every week when a new episode drops. I cannot wait to listen to it. I just think it's the best. And I love rewatching movies, and it's awesome.
Sorry, just because it's relevant. You know what one of those movies are? I just was watching The Plane, Thomas Crown Affair with Pierce Brosnan. What a great movie. Like,
man,
that's a deep cut.
It's a good one. It's a good one though.
Dude,
it is.
You're not even going to believe this.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I turned my phone off. I bought The Thomas Crown Affair 3 days ago.
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. I am not kidding. Like, I was like, I kind of want to watch that again.
It's so good.
Well, and also,
how good it is.
How uncool do you feel watching Pierce Brosnan? You're like, you want to talk about imposter syndrome?
That guy's
so smooth. He's so smooth.
Guy, and he was like 40. He was like 42 or 45 in the movie, and I'm sitting here going like, shit, that guy is just a stud.
It's also one of those. Man, I need an English accent movies. You know what I mean? Like,
it immediately makes you like your IQ goes up by 30 points.
Yeah.
All right. My question. So if you could have lunch with one person, current or historical, who would it be and why? I'm really excited about this.
So
answer.
I have a little bit of a nerd streak in me around U.S. history, and in particular U.S. presidential history. I don't know why. I don't know where it came from. So well. Maybe it's my age. I don't know. And I think as I go further and further and further in my career, you're faced with tough decisions, and you're faced with challenges, and you're faced with trying to take a bunch of advice, and then you have to make the decision. You become the person that makes the decision. You don't stand back and wait for somebody else to do it.
Yep.
So I'm fascinated with like Lincoln during the Civil War, especially Kennedy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. You have all these people in your ear. How did you make that decision?
Yeah.
And what were you thinking when you made that decision? And it's fascinating because, look, I deal with beer and wine. The world isn't going to end, right? Like, but when it's just fascinating to me, like, how can you make decisions when you're at that height of pressure? You have all these people in your ear. There's just something super fascinating about that to me. I'd love to sit down and chat through it.
Good one. Another good one. Yeah. All right, Keith.
Yeah, let's
kick us
dive
off,
in,
my friend.
All right. So one of your core tenets, at least what I remember from our conversations, is standing out in a sea of sameness.
Yeah.
Which, especially in our industry, I feel like there's a lot of that. And honestly, I mean, in the beer industry too. I mean, look at the racks and racks and racks of different beers, right? So how do you stand out in the sea of sameness? What's the recipe for that?
It's interesting. I thought that it was competitive in the beer world, and then I got into the wine world, and now all of a sudden you're looking globally. I don't have to worry about other Washington state wines. I have to worry about Malbecs from Spain and Barolos from Italy and Bordeaux from France, and it just is insanity. I have a framework that I've used over the years that I learned really early on in my beer career about branding and marketing and how to build brands and propositions to really make them stick, to kind of use a kitschy colloquialism. But and it's the S.I.M.P.L.E framework, but really, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a bit, but really the thing that really helps brand stand out first and foremost, if you could only focus on one thing, it's know your customer or know your audience or know your client. Who are you trying to talk to? How are you trying to talk to them? How do they want to be talked to? And connecting with them on that level. I think the era of, I keep using shoes just because it's something that makes sense to me. Hey, we make shoes for people and everybody has feet, so everybody's got to wear shoes. That era doesn't exist anymore. It's like, well, what are you trying to do with your shoes and where are you doing it?
Especially
and
how bespoke it can be too.
100%. Yeah. And at all different levels and all different use cases. And, so I think the real key to standing out is know who you're targeting, know who you're trying to talk to, and then making sure that comes through in spades. I would venture to guess that if you look at a lot of the top producers in real estate, and I don't know anything, about real estate, but I would venture to guess that more often than not, the ones that do really well, they know how to talk to their audience. They know what they're looking for. They know what matters to them. They know how to connect with them. Maybe they can't write a textbook on how to do it, but they know it innately that, I'm dealing with, 60 to 70 to 80-year-old third home retiree buyers. TikTok's probably not the way to try to talk to those folks, right? So,
they're like, "What's a TikTok?"
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Right. Like I said, nobody knows anything. But corner the market in geriatric TikTok, I guess, if you wanted to. But
So, because I can hear people in real estate listening to this while they're driving and screaming at their car stereo, because while I need to know who my client is, I don't want to just work with first-time home buyers.
Right.
I don't want to, everyone would be like, well, I'm the luxury agent. While I get that, how does do you mean pick something to be great at? Do you mean, how do I get past down to the more specific without ostracizing the rest of the market? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are a couple of different ways to look at that. First of all, I think that people immediately get really freaked out when you try to at least give the appearance of thin slicing their market, because it's a scarcity mindset. Well, there's just not going to be enough people and I'm not talking to everybody and I got to talk to everybody because if I don't, nobody will like me. You got to remember, Nike started as a running shoe company. Apple started as a machine for creative people only. A bunch of different companies out there started thin sliced. We're talking to one kind of person and we're confident enough that if we can really nail talking to that one kind of person, it'll grow and it'll grow and it'll grow and it'll grow,
Sure.
And, that's certainly the case in the beer and wine industry. I mean, how many people do you know who drink wine that aren't onophiles or sommeliers, or, they don't know the skin thickness on the fruit and when it was picked and what the, rainfall was like that year. I'm sure that winery started like that. I'm sure in the beginning they wanted to talk to people that really dug what they were doing, but that'll grow and grow and grow as you get better and better and better at your proposition and what you're trying to do. It's very non-intuitive that getting specific opens more doors than it closes. And it will feel in the beginning like you are closing every door, but what you're doing is you're honing your proposition and you're figuring out, what am I good at? How can I be awesome at that? And then how do I take that to other avenues?
Well, because there's so much noise, right? So rather, if you try to speak to everyone, you aren't loud enough for anyone to hear you. But there's so much noise that if you say, I am this is who I serve, then they're like, oh, good, because that's me. And I've been hearing all this noise. So now I'm coming to you. You start small and then you brand extend, right? Like maybe I choose, and it could even be not a client type. It could be a lead generation methodology. Like, I'm going to do the best open house of anyone in residential real estate. And I'm going to do open house every Saturday and every Sunday. And that's my primary lead generation technique. And I'm going to meditate on, obsess about, think about open house every single day. And my open houses will be kick-ass. And then your next one, once you've mastered that and you spend 2 years honing your open house skills, well, then you can add another component, right? But you gotta get great at one piece first and have that be your core value prop.
Can I ask a question, just because I'm really intrigued by, and Nick, I really want to hear your thought on this, because you're making me think about, like, we teach this, to Keith's comment, piggybacking, we teach, like, don't try to be everything to everyone. Pick a market, pick a segment of the market, do that really, really well, and then expand. But let me ask you, you've worked for all these different companies, these different beer companies. What is your mindset when you come in? You're now in charge of marketing for this new beer company. Do you go? I'm by the way, I'm spitballing here. Do you go to the grocery store, look at all the labels, the brands? There's refrigerators filled with beer, and as a beer consumer, I'm like, I have no freaking idea what the differences are. Like, are you going, we need to identify who the person is that's going to buy this beer. We then need to figure out how to hone in our branding and marketing to that. Like, tell me a little bit about how you come into a new company and then reestablish it, because realtors are going to do the same thing. They swap brands or they're trying to figure it out. Like, tie that together for us.
Yeah, it's a great question, because one thing that drives me crazy is always staying 50,000 feet. You know what you ought to do is build a great brand proposition. It's like, well, okay, how do I do that? Like, no shit, build a great brand. You know what you should do is become a millionaire. And then,
great idea.
Or
a billionaire. Like,
I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I'm like, the number one comment you get when you work in marketing is, you know what you should do?
Oh,
you know what you should do? You should get Beyonce to drink your beer. Yeah.
Great idea.
Shit,
yeah,
right?
Great idea.
Yeah, in there.
On stage at the American Music Awards.
There are three different ways that we can look at it, James, to answer your question. And I'm trying to sort of maybe make this fit into real estate. So if I'm off here, give me a little rope. And
we're
Keith,
all following you anyway.
No, you said it perfectly with your content. If I'm a real estate agent, I can focus on the person, the client. Like, what does the client need? First-time homebuyers. I can focus on the property type, single-family residence, condos, luxury homes, trailers, whatever. Or I can focus on the channel. I'm going to be the greatest digital expert. I'm going to be the greatest content. I am going to be known for making awesome content. And by focusing on making awesome content, I will back my way into my audience, and I will back my way into my homes I'm looking at. In the beer business, we do it almost the exact same way. You're like, okay, what is my brewery good at? Like, is my brewery good at making IPAs? There are breweries out there that rock at making IPAs. There are breweries out there that rock at making, barrel-aged 14% stouts. There are wineries that are killer at making, Bordeaux style, big giant Cabernets or whatever. So maybe we're starting with the beer. We're good at this, so now we're going to find the customer and the consumer basis that likes this, and then we're going to market our brand accordingly. Or maybe our brand is in a unique location. We're a brewery that's in Napa Valley, like Russian River. So we have a sense of place that is super unique, and that's what we're going to lean into. And the customers that are going to go after are going to dovetail with us because of where we're from, because where we're from is unique. And we're going to build our brewery portfolio and our beers based off where we're from. So what you're doing as a realtor is you're finding what matters. And maybe focusing on your customer or your client is an easy way to delineate that in the beginning. But I think try to get focused on what matters. Is it a home type that you're going after? Is it a client type that you're going after? Or is it a channel type that you want to pursue? I want to be the greatest realtor on TikTok that's ever been invented. Great. Then
own it. Do it well.
Yeah.
And do it exceptionally well.
And don't stop. And keep doing it.
And don't stop.
Right.
Yeah. And don't stop. And by going that direction, just be aware that will lead you to a client base. And then the next step is, okay, not only am I trying to crush TikTok, but I'm also leaning heavier into my client base. What else do they like? Where else do they go? What else do they do?
Right. Yeah. And, the human brain, given too many choices, chooses nothing, right? So don't try to do everything in the industry. Pick one thing, be great at it, then add something else.
Right. And it's hard because it's so non-intuitive. We need to get everybody. We need to be everything for everybody. And it just, I've done it. I've tried it. I've done it at companies I've worked at. I've done it with breweries I've worked at. And it
reminds me of, it's funny is tying this back just for what Keith and I live and breathe. We've had people who have been like, oh yeah, Next Home, it's that company with all those small real estate offices. And we look at them and we're like, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
There's 630 of them and 6,000 people across the US.
Yeah.
Like we have a niche. We do it really well. And we've grown this business organically over 10 years into this thing because no one was serving that market. We're not trying to be everything to everybody.
Right.
And then to your point, brands evolve and they change over time. And so, but we owned a niche incredibly well and we did not have competition in that space. Technically really don't even still today.
Right.
You've got this framework called S.I.M.P.L.E. It kind of, I'm sure relates to what we just talked about, but can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah. So the S.I.M.P.L.E. framework is based off of one of the most impactful lessons I've learned in my entire career. When I started my beer career at Rogue in Portland and in Newport, Oregon, the entire company was founded by ex-Nike guys. And I mean old school, brought Jordan to market Nike guys, where Nike was fighting the whole world. And so it was a real aggressive, real heart-based, gut-based kind of marketing. How can we resonate with our customers in a way that nobody else can, which I think is something that Nike certainly early on did better than anybody. And there was a guy who was an early advisor at Rogue. His name was Rob Strasser. Unfortunately, he passed away a while ago. He was the first marketing director at Nike, really, really influential guy. The modern Nike that you know now is essentially because of this guy and a handful of other folks, played by Jason Bateman in the Air movie.
Oh yeah, sure. Got you.
You're wondering. And
now I'm on the same page.
Yeah. And he had this thing. He said, every great marketing initiative, every great brand, every great piece of advertising should be these 6 things. It should be simple, interesting, meaningful, unique, understandable, and unexpected. And he actually hand wrote it on a piece of butcher paper, and they had it framed at the Rogue offices in his handwriting. And I took that and just kind of modified it a little bit to simple, interesting, meaningful, unpredictable, logical, and exclusive. If your brand, if your marketing, if your commercial, if your advertising can follow these 6 principles, you'll really have something special. And if you go back and watch every Super Bowl commercial that really popped that you liked, every brand that really stands out to you, any kind of online content that really stands into you, I would bet a buffalo nickel that 9 times out of 10, it follows the S.I.M.P.L.E. paradigm.
Like the QR code?
If something, conversely, if something misses, it's either, not simple, or it's not meaningful to people, or it doesn't, it doesn't make any sense, or everybody's trying to do it. You know, there's just something about it that it isn't one of those 6 things. The one that happens almost always is it's too complicated. It's too complicated to understand. You're telling a story that's way too long. It's not simple enough.
Can you give us the S.I.M.P.L.E. a little slower, just because because you talk fast, and I want people to really internalize it. So what is simple?
I blow through it too quickly.
No, it's awesome. It's good. I just want people to really, like, someone's trying to scribble it down and they didn't catch it. So walk us through that, what that stands for again.
Yeah. So it's just the acronym. It spells out simple, S-I-M-P-L-E. The S is for simple. Mm-hmm. The I is for interesting. M is for meaningful. The P, I kind of curveballed the P a little bit.
I love the P. The P is my favorite.
Unpredictable.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love that. That's marketing.
There you go. Which is also weirdly unpredictable, I guess, that the P starts with a U, but that's right. There you go. The L is logical, and the E is exclusive. So simple, interesting, meaningful, unpredictable, logical, and exclusive.
And it doesn't
simple.
It doesn't have to be all those things, right? It's got to be some of those things, or
you know, Keith, with me and my teams, and God, my teams are probably so sick of hearing about this because I bring it up constantly. It's just a great compass to use when you're developing your brand, when you're developing. It's a litmus test. It's a lens. It's a, you know, it's the Ovaltine decoder ring from the Christmas Story, right? Like, you're just like, okay, let's pressure test this. And I could sit here for the next 4 hours and tell you all the ways in my career that we've screwed that up, and the flops that we've had with, you know, we're trying to tell a story. And 9 times out of 10, you're trying to tell a story about the beer that is way too complicated. It's way too long, and it's something nobody would ever really care about.
Right.
And
to James's point, he brought up the Super Bowl commercial. I think it was from 2 years ago. It was just a QR code bouncing across the screen. Right. That's very simple.
Very.
You immediately understand. It's very unpredictable.
And you want to know what the hell it is.
And you want to know what it is.
You want to know what it is.
And no one else is doing it.
And no one else is doing it.
Yeah,
and I scanned it. Tons of people, like, I think their website actually crashed because so many people scanned it. Yeah.
Conversely, and again, no disrespect to this company. No, you know, we're all God's children, I guess, right? Whatever. But there was a commercial for, I think it was oat milk. And it was like a guy standing out in the middle of the field. And like, I don't even think it mentioned the product. And it was like totally lambasted as like one of the worst Super Bowl commercials ever. And you're like, yeah, you had no idea what the hell they were talking about. And they were trying to be too creative.
I hate that when people do that and they're like, well, they got you talking about it. I'm like, yeah, in the worst way possible. Right. Like, dumbest commercial ever. Right.
Yeah. There's no such thing as bad press. Yeah, there is. It's called bad press.
Yeah.
You know, like, come on. What are we doing here?
But on your same thing, because I've happened to be at the Super Bowl the past 2 years, not by my dollar, thank God. And
Dang, that was a drop. Did you catch how I just slid that in?
No,
I've
only got these two.
Been to the last two Super Bowls.
What? What? So, and I said not on my dollar. Thank you. Somebody else paid for it.
Right.
When Rocket Mortgage did the John Denver Take Me Home Country Roads, and we didn't know what was going on. We just were singing it in the audience.
Right.
And it was not a simple ad campaign, but it was brilliant in how they tied it to the American
when that ad
ownership.
ran, I remember at the end of the Super Bowl thinking, how in the hell did a mortgage company do the best real estate commercial? To your point. Yeah.
It's interesting because I think one thing they did with that ad that was really fascinating is they took one of the tenets of S.I.M.P.L.E. and nailed it. And I mean like capital N nailed it. And that's meaningful. Yeah. If you can find a way, there was an ad it was a while ago. I'm sure you guys remember it. It was a Ram pickup ad during the Super Bowl, and it had Paul Harvey reading God Made a Farmer thing.
Good.
And it is powerful. It is so amazing. And it's like, holy shit, you guys took, meaningful and interesting to like the 9 millionth degree. Right. And so I just use it all the time when we're pressure testing ideas. Hey, even like concepts for labels for beer or names for beer or events we're trying to pull off or packaging that we're redesigning. It's like, okay, is it simple? Is it interesting, meaningful? Like, are we getting there? Is it close?
Yeah.
So we just always use it as that pressure test.
All right. Next question, a little bit of a left turn. Good. You talk about psychographics a fair bit. I happen to know a lot about psycho X's, but I know very little about psychographics. So what the hell is that? What is that?
Well, there was a girl in college.
No, I'm just kidding. Psychographics.
Yeah. Graphics. Okay. Sorry. Best 2 months of my life.
Your wife is on the other side of the wall, just to remind you.
Yeah. Well, she's not a psycho X, though. She's, see how I got out of that quick?
Yeah, that was
She's
artful.
Not a psycho X. I'm just kidding.
And we've met her, and we know you married
awesome.
up, so keep it down a notch. Yeah.
She's the best. I have no business. I mean, you want to know how I've learned a lot in marketing? That's how you know. You're like, how did that guy pull that?
Literally.
She should be doing her own. She should be doing her own keynotes if she isn't already.
She's the one that I throw all my ideas past, and I'm like, "What do you think?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's stupid. That's not simple." I'm like, "Oh, thanks."
Thanks. I'm going to go crawl in the corner now.
Psychographics.
Yeah. Let's talk about imposter syndrome. Psychographics. So you basically have two different ways, not basically, but you got a couple of different ways to look at your consumer base. You've got the tried and true demographics. Where are you from? What's your income? Do you have your bachelor's degree or whatever stupid stuff like that? Kind of this general information, census kind of information. Well, then you have psychographics, and that is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger deal in certainly the business that I do. Back in the day, people used to be, certainly with our generation, and I assume that we're all kind of roughly the same age. I'm 73, so no, I'm just kidding. But back in the good old days, you were a single thing drinker with maybe one other thing. So I'm a beer drinker and maybe I drink whiskey, or I'm a wine drinker and maybe I'll have a margarita, or I'm, a whiskey drinker, I'll have a light beer every now and then. Well, now those proclivities are all over the place. And so psychographics becomes really important. It's not necessarily about what you're drinking, but it's about where you're drinking it and what are you doing and how are you feeling and what are you thinking and what's going through your head. If you think about it in the context of purchasing a home, that is, for the large majority of the populace, the number one purchase decision you'll ever make in your life.
Right.
And it is not as simple as finding the right house, putting 20% down and signing some mortgage papers. There is so much more to it. Even if you're buying for investing, there's so much more to it.
Can you say that again for the naysayers who think that the realtor is useless? Just I want to hear for the people in the back of the room that it's not just, never mind. Sorry,
but really, it's like, hey, look, my knee hurts and I can go on Google and probably get close to like what's wrong with my knee, but it'll also probably tell me I have cancer. So maybe I should go to the doctor. You know what I mean? Like maybe go to the doctor once in a while. So
Nick, I don't think knee cancer is a thing, but
don't tell Google that because, we all have it.
That's right. That's right.
But psychographics become incredibly important when you're really trying to dive into who is the person that is buying this and what are they thinking and what are they feeling. And what's funny about all of this stuff? What's funny about building a great brand proposition, or who's the client I'm going after, or what channel am I going to pursue and what are they thinking and feeling? People get super intimidated by that because they don't want to make the wrong decision or they don't want to make the wrong assumption. But honestly, if you sat down and took a few days and just really thought it through, you could get most of the way there. I've got a first-time home buyer. They're walking in to buy their first home. What are they thinking?
Yeah.
Well, they're scared to death.
Yep.
Even if they're millionaires.
Can we afford it?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is this payment going to do? A 30-year loan? I mean, I'm not even going to live that long. Oh my, look at all these closing. I've never signed my name this many times. So if you think about those psychographics, now all of a sudden you can start to build your process to that. Right?
And I would even theorize that real estate maybe more than any industry, has some of the strongest psychographics of
Agreed.
any other. Like, it's so, to your point, it's so important and so meaningful.
Well, it's funny, Keith, because if you think about it in the beer business, the beer business is an emotional decision, right? Like, and the functional benefit of everything you buy is basically the same. You drink enough of anything, you're going to wake up with a headache in the morning, right? So with a home, you have an emotional component, but then you have this crazy, like, pragmatic financial component too.
Right.
And it is such a massive transaction, regardless of who's doing it, that psychographics then become even more important.
I have a question before Keith takes us to our final question.
Yep.
I just literally thought of this because it's so relevant. So Keith and I, people know this, we haven't been drinking alcohol for a while.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's a new thing for various reasons, but we're drinking lots of non-alcoholic beer. And I want to tie this for a second because I think there's a good correlation here. A lot of real estate agents are worried about the future. New companies, tech, artificial intelligence. Is the agent needed? Center of the transaction. Is the customer moving? Are they going to try and AI their house? All of these things. I'm assuming you're also looking at your industry as a changing demographic. Like, I know for a fact more and more people are especially with
drinking less and less.
They're drinking less and less. And that's a new thing. So what I guess I'm trying to find my question here, but there's a parallel of industries are evolving. The psychograph of that, like, you guys must be thinking about that internally, and you're looking at it like, how do we thrive in this new world of where things are going? Like, can you parallel that at all in any way? I'm putting you way on the spot here.
No. Yeah. First of all, you guys, thank you for your service to the alcohol industry. I appreciate it.
Realtor conventions have lots of alcohol, so just stay there.
Thank you. I salute you guys. I appreciate it. My family appreciates it.
I'm pretty sure I've single-handedly carried a couple companies. So
we got your picture framed in the office. Believe me, we got the wall of fame, Keith, right there. Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, industries are always changing, and there's always something coming in that is going to disrupt everything forever, and we're all going to be unemployed, and we're all going to die miserable deaths. And that has been happening since the invention of the printing press. Now, is AI different? Sure. But everything was different, and everything's always different. And what do? Well, 9 times out of 10, you learn how to use that thing. You pivot accordingly. Your business grows. Your business changes. There was a little bitty thing that happened in the late 90s, early 2000s called the internet. That was the same exact thing. There was the radio back in the day. Electric
cars.
Right.
Right.
And there's always something, and it's always the end of times, and it's always the big bad monster. So, I think that's something to really bear in mind. In the beer business, there are 2 big shifts that are happening right now, and in the wine business, and I would say across all of alcoholic beverage, there are 2 gigantic shifts that are happening right now. Number one, like you guys said, customers are drinking less. It's not an outright abstinence culture. It's not an outright, like, there are people that have stopped drinking, and that's great for them. And whatever works for you works for everybody. But I think customer base wide, there's been a move towards more moderation. Okay. That's a big change.
Yep.
Number 2 is what are those beverages look like, and how they act and how they function are changing. In beer, you're moving beyond beer. You're going to seltzers and twisted teas and, kombuchas and all this other kind of stuff. And now there's the big NA wave.
Stop it, Keith.
Which
you said kombucha, and it was a thing for a while. I was drinking. Just keep going.
Shirley Temples with vodka, whatever. Whatever it is, right? But and then you have the whole NA space, which in beer, like, you can't avoid. It's huge, and it's real.
It's getting bigger and bigger.
It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And you can do one of 2 things as a brewery. You can either see that as an opportunity, just like AI, just like the internet, just like the radio, or you can say, no, I'm not changing, I'm not moving, and dig your feet in. And the breweries that are able to say, well, my consumer base has a new need, and maybe I have a new consumer and let me see if I can connect with them, how my, in the same voice and in the same proposition as my brand, I think you'll have something really phenomenal. There's a brewery out there that has done this better than anybody, and it's Deschutes Brewing out of Bend. They made non-alcoholic versions of two of their most popular beers, Fresh Squeezed IPA and Black Butte Porter. Black Butte Porter's been around since the late 80s, and they're absolutely crushing it numbers-wise with these products because what they found is
I both wrote that down, by the way.
They're incredible beers. Yeah. They found a way to connect with their customers with their brand in a way that the customer is looking for with a non-alcoholic version of the beer. And they went towards it instead of digging their heel in. And I think every industry can do that. Certainly real estate with AI and the rise
AI
of
empowered agents versus traditional agents.
Right. For sure.
Embrace it. Figure out how to use the
For
services.
sure. Yeah. Figure out how to use it. Figure out what you can do with it. Is it going to change? Yeah. But you know what? It'll be another thing after this. Right. So,
I mean, this is a big one, right? But we've had other big ones. To your point, printing press, internet, mobile. Like we've had these waves, and yet we're still here.
Yeah. Do you guys remember, rhetorically, because of course you do you remember how insane people used to think you were if you bought something online?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you're going to put your credit card online. They're going to take all your money. You're never going to get, oh my God, the whole world's going to fall apart.
Or the fact that we get in a car with a total stranger and they drive us off. Like 20 years ago, I've been like, you got in the car with a total stranger?
Right.
What do you mean you go somewhere and stay in someone's house? You don't even know them.
Right.
And it's
like a good point.
Yeah.
Well, and then and then I'll get to the last question because we got to wrap. I know you've been very generous with your time.
All good.
But I ask this sometimes when I do talks. What percentage of online sales retail sales of the total dollars spent? What percentage do you think is spent online?
I bet it's lower than I would think it is. I would assume it's lower than I think it is.
It's 16%.
You know what's funny about that, Keith? I asked somebody I know who works at Starbucks corporate here in Seattle. And I was like, what's the percentage of people that use the Starbucks app to pay? I thought it was going to be like 90%. It's like 9%.
Right.
Like, and it's like, oh, okay.
To me, that just means like we think there's these revolutions, but they're really evolutions. And
totally.
Everything takes longer than you think. 83%, almost 84% of retail sales still occur in brick and mortar where you're swiping your credit card or you're giving someone cash.
Right.
All right. Last question, because we're tight on time.
Hit it.
We ask everyone this. If you were a real estate agent, what's the one thing you would implement today to help your business for 2025?
Boy, this is such a great question. And I think that this is, for a marketer, this is the hardest question to answer. And I say this all the time to teams I'm talking to, people I'm consulting with. And the way I say it is, do you go up or do you go down? And what I mean by that is I used to work with this guy way back in the day who would say there's head up and head down work. Head up work is you're up, you're looking around, you're looking at the horizon, you're looking years down the road, you're planning, you're strategizing, you're charting direction. Head down is you're in something, you're thinking tactically, you're doing, I'm working, I'm pen to paper. So I always say to people, do you go up or do you go down? Do you strategize what your brand is going to look like down the road, big, giant 50,000 foot view? Or do you immediately get into tactics and you build a TikTok profile, or you build, I get into CRM or I get into email marketing? My response is always the proclivity or the propensity is to go down because it's tangible and you can touch it and you can produce something. I can put a post on TikTok. I can write an email. But what I would do if I were consulting with someone that was getting into real estate right away is I would say, take a couple of weeks and really focus on what am I trying to do from a brand perspective? What am I about? What do I care about? What channels do I want to get involved in? What does the universe look like and where do I want to go with it? And focus on choosing that direction. And you don't have to take 6 months to do it. You can take, even if you just took a couple of days and went, I'm just going to lock in and pull this together. I've worked on brands before where we would do 3-day sessions where we would just kind of lock ourselves in a room. And by the end of those 3 days, you'd really be down the road on, okay, we know what we care about. We know who we're trying to talk to. We know what we're trying to say to them. That leads us into how we should talk to them, what channels we should talk on, and what tone of voice we should take. Great. Let's build that out.
Yeah.
And again, I know that that's a hard answer because it's not, well, you know what, the future is
run an ad.
Yeah. The future's in Instagram, my boy. And that's where we're going, but I think that none of that tactical stuff matters if you don't know where you're going, because you'll waste a ton of time and more importantly, you'll waste a shitload of money.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's funny, and maybe we'll close on this, but there's an agent who isn't even with our company, but I use him as my example often. He's the tattooed realtor. His name's Justin Mercer. He's out of somewhere in Arizona, I think Gilbert. But I mean, this guy's got face tats like all over, like head to toe tats. And he just leans into it. He's like, yeah, I'm the tattooed realtor. And I mean, his marketing's a little edgier. His Instagram stories are a little edgier. And, he knows who he is. He's not trying to be anything else. And I don't actually know him, but I don't know how much time he spent thinking about it. Or maybe it was sort of like, well, this is the direction I have to head. But I think it's brilliant.
It's brilliant.
It's really smart.
If he was trying to be something he wasn't, then it wouldn't be brilliant.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Yeah. I'm trying to be the next, Searhand or whatever. I'm trying to be, and it's like, okay, but you're not. Like, so be you. And people love it when someone or something or, a brand is true to it, authentic and true to themselves, right? Do your thing.
All the time.
Yeah. All right, man. We got to wrap somewhere because we could keep going forever. And I know you have a life. Great. So, Nick, thank you so much.
Seriously.
Thanks,
it was awesome. It was like a giant list of everybody should be just writing these things down and focusing on how to adjust their
listen to this one twice, kids.
Well, I got to say, guys, thanks for having me in New Orleans. I've done a lot of keynotes for real estate companies, dude. The next home people, the next home folks were amazing. As an Oregon Duck whose colors are green and yellow, I kind of hated the orange. I'm not going to lie, but I'm just kidding. I love it. The whole entire time, it was just myself and my wife. It was so much fun being around you guys collectively. So thank you for having me so much. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Our pleasure.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, Nick.
All right, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
Yep. You don't want to let Keith down, do you? Hit subscribe, and not only will you never miss an episode of this podcast, but you'll also never make Keith sad. He's easily entertained.